My name is Star Blacker, and I was in Tillabéri, Niger from 1967 until, actually, I was there a year and a half, and then I was in Niamey, the capital of Niger, for the last year of my stay. And that's in the eastern part of the country, and I learned Jerema. And my first experience of walking around the village was going through these wonderful winding paths through the homes, and there were fences, and one opened up into this large field, and there were a bunch of kids playing, and I was so tickled to see a bunch of children playing, and I went over and watched them, and they turned around and saw me, and they began to scream bloody murder, and I was shocked. And they ran away. But after I'd been there a while and people got to know who I was, it would happen occasionally, but basically they began to know that this white person was not going to kill them and come in and destroy the village. But that, I guess, was the history I found out later. One of the things that was a shock was being around in the dispensary where they had all the supplies. Here we were, Peace Corps volunteers, we had nothing but our health education, and we were going to educate the villagers, and we'd go to the dispensary for weighing day and weigh the babies, and then you began to tell if they had lost weight or gained weight. But as I would hang out there, I began to see that the iodine bottle was getting pinker and pinker. It wasn't red like iodine is supposed to be. And I asked the nurse, well, how come this iodine is so pink? He said, well, we're running out, so we keep adding water. And that just shocked me, that they had no supplies. And what they would give the children when they had stomach aches and diarrhea was charcoal pills. And sometimes that worked, but a lot of times it didn't. Oh, and now I'm thinking of a lot of other things. Oh gosh. But they're hard to even talk about. Oh gosh, oh. Oh my goodness, look what you're doing. You're like therapeutic or something. I mean, I haven't thought about these things, and I would only feel comfortable telling you all. Why do people do this? Gee. I haven't really talked about this in 42 years. So it was great to get in touch with Jane. And that's what happened from you all coming and putting me on YouTube. Then Jane told me I was on YouTube, and Jane is a volunteer who's lived in Taos since 1976, and we didn't even know that we were here in the same state. So we've gotten together. But I didn't even talk to her about some of these things that come up of what you're asking me, these stories. I mean, it was a very hard place. And, well, I was there before the famine, but then the famine began, and we had children that were dying every week, and they would be taking children out to the cemetery. That's hard enough. Okay, there's Mariatu. Mariatu was, had kwashiorkor and marasmus. And so I worked with her, and there was nothing to give her. So basically I got her grandmother to learn how to give her supplementary food, but she was in such bad shape that we would buy vitamins and other medicines when we could, when we go to the capital, when we go to Niamey, or we could get them from our Peace Corps kit. And we, the grandmother really was on it. She really paid attention. She did everything we asked her to do. And Mariatu got better. It was amazing. And we felt like we saved her life. And I hadn't been there for a couple of weeks, and then one day I went by and I said, Fofo, and they said, Kanabani, Bani Same, wala Talikulusaga. And I'd say, well, where's Mariatu? And they'd say, Abu. she was dead, and she died from malaria. And so we saved her from malnutrition, but it didn't matter. Communicable diseases were pretty rough. And so in the town that I was in, we had a lot of problems with malaria, but we also had a lot of problems with people thinking that their bowel movements were red and that was normal, and their urine was red, but that was normal, so they thought they were fine. And they basically had schistosomiasis, which they would get from the river. The schistosomes live in the snails that live in the reeds that live in the river. So being 22, 23, I never thought too much about it. I was told, well, if you get water on your skin and you dry it, then that's good. But if the water dries on your skin, then the schistosomes will go into your body and you'll get that. They'll end up in your bladder or your rectum. And I was in the pirogues a lot. We'd go to the islands and visit the other people there. And being 22 and 23, I wasn't too worried about it. But my goodness, thinking about it now, it could have easily been, we could have fallen in or stepped in the water or something. But I never was unfortunate enough to get that. But then after learning about it, then I started to learn that the villagers all had this problem, and there was nothing that we could do to treat them for that. And what was making me emotional earlier was some of the things I would see around the illnesses, especially with the kids, and the diarrhea problems and malnutrition problems, and witnessing children having this diarrhea problem, and their lower intestine would actually exit out their rectum when they would be having diarrhea, and the mothers would just push it back inside. And I remember the first time I saw that, and I said, "What is that?" And the woman said, "Oh, Wayno. Wayno is the name for the sun, but it's also the name for this condition. So I would imagine it's really pretty painful." Evidently, a lot of children would get that with kwashiorkor or the marasmus. I think it was more with the kwashiorkor, but any kind of diarrhea, would cause that. And that was horrendous. So I was talking about weighing day, and the first time I went to weighing day, not only did I see that the iodine was, red, and then the next times it was less. Kind of a funny thing. And what I've had to think about it as being a body worker, it's like, or a health care person, what happens when we're in a situation where we can't really help the people as much as we would like to, and there aren't those kinds of supplies available. What do we do? What happens to us? And I remember the first day that I did go to weighing day, and I saw these babies that were so thin, and I just was running around the clinic trying, what can I give them, and I was saying to Karen, what can we do? What can we do? And she said nothing. And I'm like, I'm not happy with that, But I reflect on, after I had been there a couple of years and volunteers came to replace me in Tillaberi, and we went to weighing day, and they were running around the clinic wanting to know what they can give the babies. And my response, I was shocked. I said nothing. I said, basically you have to get used to it. This is the way it is. And I realized that I had kind of, I guess you could say hardened, but it's more like, you have to accept what you can't do. And that's the reality. It's very hard to see suffering and not be able, and feel helpless, especially with children. So that was kind of an anecdote, but for me to reflect on seeing the other volunteers that were the new ones, and how they were so shocked to see these babies that were so thin. And okay. Well, it's hard to talk about it because people, you know, if you haven't been in a foreign country, it's hard to relate. And I know, having gone through that, coming home, I couldn't believe the waste. I couldn't believe how people there could live on our garbage. And if the yogurt says it expires August 2nd, then you throw it away? No. No. On the lighter side, I was there when Cassius Clay changed his name to Muhammad Ali, and people there were so excited that he changed his name to a Muslim name, and they couldn't stop talking about that. Also on the political side, I was disappointed to see that the United States had paid for a bridge to be built across the Niger River from Niamey over to an island. And it turned out that once you got to the island, there was nowhere to go. You know, there was no other bridge to go back to the land. And so this island happened to be the private garden of the president. And so the United States built him a bridge. And I have a movie picture of people walking across the bridge because it was open and going over to the island. And then I have, later on in the video, people going back over the bridge because there was nowhere else to go. And that was the United States, I feel, mistake on our part. That money could have been much better spent.